Well, haven't these quarterfinals been fun? I am really pleasantly surprised by how enjoyable these quarterfinal matches have been, because I didn't expect too much to happen from them. I thought that the four favorites would get through fairly comfortably. I did not see Honduras being Panama at all. I think I've maybe underestimated Honduras more than I should have throughout this tournament. Guatemala, I thought maybe could upset Canada, but I still had that down as a long shot. But Guatemala had continued to look really good, and it's really enjoyable to watch Guatemala, I think. Like, I'm really enjoying their run to the semifinals. First time since 1996 they've done that. As for Honduras, their first semifinal since 2013, and then you've got the U.S. and Mexico. It is a shame that of the four favorites who fell, it was the two who have most threatened the U.S. and Mexico to upset that order, where the U.S. and Mexico pretty much are the only nations that win CONCACAF trophies. In the past 30 years, we've had 17 Gold Cups, 9 of which have been won by Mexico and 7 by the U.S. Only one of them was won by Canada, and the rest is the U.S. Mexico. And the same story goes for the Nations League, where the U.S. has won 3 and Mexico won. There was a time before the 90s where other CONCACAF nations actually would win stuff. Like Guatemala, for instance, actually have won the CONCACAF championship, but that's quite a ways away now. In the past 30 years, it has entirely been U.S. and Mexico dominant. And so what we got in the quarterfinals ended up being the established order upheld in the sense that the two giants who always do well did end up winning their games and going through to the semifinals. The Gold Cup very much does belong to the U.S. and Mexico, whilst the two nations who have most threatened to upend that order in recent times both went out on penalties. But fair play to Guatemala and Honduras, who both played some pretty good games. Guatemala maybe were aided by the Canada red card, but it was only 1-0 at that point anyways, and they did more than enough. The goal was really nice, and I said this in the video about the U.S. Costa Rica in reference to the semifinal now upcoming, but from what I've watched of Guatemala, and I didn't actually see all of the quarterfinal match, I watched like the last 20 minutes, but I missed the opening bit of it, but I have watched two of Guatemala's group matches, and both of those I thought they don't create like a ton of chances, but they are like really good at creating like really, really high quality chances, even if they don't come around that often. And so that's how they beat Jamaica with a really delightful goal. Nearly made it 2-0 in the second half, if not for a good save. They got, I think, at least one really good chance against Panama. Like, Guatemala does create strong chances. So I am a little bit scared of them in the semifinals, and it's great to see them win the shootout. It's a shame for Canada. Like, I felt really bad for the guy who missed the last penalty at the end for Canada, but it is awesome for Guatemala. And what we're seeing is a difference in the Gold Cup. Like, it's not usually this exciting, the Gold Cup, all the time. Honduras and Guatemala making the semifinals is a welcome change of pace and something I'm really excited for. And I mean, I would be livid if the U.S. didn't make it to the final, but at the same time, imagine a Honduras versus Guatemala Gold Cup final. Wouldn't that be awesome? And they both got a chance in their respective semifinal matches because Guatemala have looked really good throughout the tournament. The only match they've actually lost was to Panama, who were a really good team. And I think that even though they went out in the quarterfinals, I still stick by most of what I've said about them in this tournament. They have a really good team that is capable of winning tournaments, even if that didn't happen this time. So I think that 1-0 loss to Panama isn't too bad. And Guatemala have looked really good in their other games. So I am a bit nervous. I think it's actually the biggest test the U.S. are going to have to face because even Costa Rica, they're not the best defensively. They haven't been this tournament. And so the U.S. probably should have won against Costa Rica easier than they had. I've been mildly disappointed with how the U.S. have been doing because even though they've won all four of their matches, I feel like a lot of times they've kind of gotten by on playing weaker opposition rather than actual skill. And sometimes they have done really well. And there were a few good moments in the Costa Rica match, but there were also some bad ones. We should have been winning 3-1, I think, in the Costa Rica match before they made it 2-2. So I do think the U.S. could struggle against Guatemala. And the same goes for Mexico. I mean, Mexico, they did seem to figure things out in the second half against Saudi Arabia, but they weren't very good in the first half. Still, they ended up winning that game fairly comfortably. The only favorite who did end up winning comfortably. On the other side of things, we have Honduras, who had a really strong second half against Panama, won the shootout, and are now in the semifinal for the first time since 2013. And Honduras is a team that used to do really well in CONCACAF. Like, there was a time around the late 2000s, early 2010s that Honduras were a really good team within CONCACAF. And I don't know if this is really a return to form for Honduras, or if this is like a run that they won't replicate easily. Either way, the fact that they're there is big, and they can beat Mexico. They have beaten Mexico. I said this in the video I made yesterday. Honduras has beaten Mexico in two matches in the Nations League recently. They won both times in Honduras. Both of them were quarterfinals over two legs, where they won the first leg 2-0 in Honduras, only to lose the second in the Azteca, which is a shame that they couldn't ultimately get over the line in that sense. But Honduras has beaten Mexico in Honduras. Can they do it in America is the question. Because the two games they lost to Mexico in the Nations League as well, those ones happened in Mexico. So, you know, a match played in the U.S. where most of the fans probably will be supporting Mexico, admittedly, but still not on Mexican soil, not with the really tough atmosphere, both in terms of generated by fans as well as the actual, like, altitude of the Azteca. Away from that, Honduras might have a better chance, maybe. Still, the U.S. and Mexico are favorites, and there is a possibility, in fact, a pretty good possibility, that we get another U.S.-Mexico final, which we've had plenty of those. I did say in the quarterfinal video, though, that I think that there's a very real chance we just get Canada, USA, Panama, Mexico, and two of those teams didn't end up making it. Could we see another upset? There's no reason why not, and I really hope there is, preferably Honduras and Mexico. So, yeah, it's really fun. I've had a lot of fun with this, and, like, this has been just a really enjoyable Gold Cup. I didn't expect it to be this much fun, and I think I've been giving more coverage of the Gold Cup than the Club World Cup, and the Gold Cup was the thing I cared more about anyways. I really do like CONCACAF football. Like, the Gold Cup actually is one of the things I most get excited about every 2 years. But also, with how enjoyable the quarterfinals have been, I'm really excited about the semifinals and what those could bring now. And don't just expect that the U.S. and Mexico are going to easily get through. The U.S. haven't done anything that makes me think they're easily going to beat Guatemala. Mexico might have an easier time with Honduras, but also they haven't looked that great at times in the tournament. So we'll see. But either way, it's been a lot of fun, and I'm really enjoying this tournament.